Great. Thank you. So I'd like to get started. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Planning and Development Standing Committee of the City Council of Wednesday, May 19th. Consistent with the governor's orders suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and banning certain gatherings such that an in-person meeting of Planning and Development Standing Committee is not possible, this meeting will be conducted by remote participation. The public may not physically attend this meeting, but every effort will be made to allow the public to view and listen to the meeting in real time and participate when necessary. If you're calling in on a phone, you can press *9 to request to speak. If you're watching on a computer device, there's a raised hand button that you can tap or press to request to speak. Use either of these options to be recognized to speak. So before we get started, two things I would like to just mention: that our meetings, our votes will be roll call votes. And I would like to begin by introducing the members of the City Council who are on the call. Councilor Jen Holgram, Councilor Barry Pett, and myself, we're Planning and Development. In addition, I see that John McCarthy at large and Jamie O'Hara at large are also on the call. And therefore, there were 5 of us, and that means that we are a quorum of the full committee. In terms of members of city staff that are on the call, we're happy that Chris Carranza, our assistant CAO, is on the call. Our assistant clerk of committee, Sherry Carvelas, is our clerk of committees, is on the call doing tonight's meeting. And then other members, and we have our city clerk, Joanne Sinos. And if I just look at the members of staff, we have our superintendent, Ben Lummis. And then we will have other members. The applicants will be introduced when we're on the matters that are in front of us. So I think that is summarizes our city staff. Barry or Jen, did I miss anybody, or am I good? Good to go? Okay, great. So what I always like to do is start off by mentioning what matters are to be continued that are on this agenda for tonight's meeting. Under item number 6 on the agenda, poll petition 2021-004, request by Comcast to excavate to place 1 3-inch PVC conduit 60 feet plus or minus in the city right of way to install a new underground conduit system starting with the existing Comcast vault in front of Main Street, number 417, to provide Comcast service to Main Street, number 427. That will be continued until June 2nd, 2021. And then item number 7, which is poll petition 2021-005, request by National Grid to install 60 feet of 4x3-inch PVC conduit from MH 369A to the driveway property line of Atlantic Road, number 238, at a point approximately 740 feet southwest of the intersection of Grapevine Road and Atlantic Road, continuing approximately 60 feet in a southwest direction, is also continued until June 2nd, 2021. So the first order of business is special council permit 2021-002, Webster Street, number 11, map 47, Lot 13, GZO, section 3.1.6B, building heights in excess of 35 feet in the R20 low medium density residential district. And this has been continued from May 5th, 2021. I've already introduced Ben Lummis, our superintendent. Happy to see our planning director, Greg Catamatori, on the call. And I will ask the applicants to introduce themselves and to update us on where we stand. So let's see. Brad, would you introduce yourself, and then Michelle?
Sure. Thank you, Councilor Gilman. Brad Dorr, I'm a principal with Dorr and Whittier Architects. We're the architects for the proposed project. I also have Michelle Rogers with me tonight, who is the project manager for the project as well. And before you get started, unfortunately, I need to make you aware of a mistake actually that we found on the dimensional table in section 3.2. And in section 3.2, right, it reflects the maximum building height is reflected as 54 feet. And we actually should have that at 56.5 feet for that one particular section of the building, which is the highest point. We became aware of this after a discussion today with the building inspector when we were reviewing the actual zoning language and how it should be reflected in the chart. That being said, I need to emphasize that there have been no changes to the actual building height in its final condition, which will be at 54 feet as we've reported it previously, or the final base grade elevation, which we've also reported at 48 feet, which represents the final grading condition. So the building height, the final grades, all the shadow studies that we've done, et cetera, all remain the same. Nevertheless, right, we understand that this is an important issue, and we apologize for any confusion that this may have caused. So our apologies for that.
Thank you. So I learned about this after the BNF meeting today. And I reached out to Chip Payson, our attorney, and also our city clerk, Joanne Sinos. And what we would like to recommend is that we ask the applicant to submit a letter amending the dimensional table, which is on page 7 of the application and page 8 in tonight's packet. And all we're asking is that it be amended by deleting the 54 feet and adding 56.5 feet. And that was the consensus of how we should move forward. And because of that, we don't plan on continuing tonight, except for just a couple of administrative matters that we want to discuss. So, so is there anything else, Michelle and Brad, in terms of that particular detail? And Superintendent Lummis, you have your hand raised. So
yeah, if I
the
could just,
applicant, so go ahead, tell us what you'd
yeah,
like.
I just want to be clear because this is, Brad called me, a little while ago earlier this afternoon to explain this to me, and it honestly took me a little bit to get my head around it. But what is, I want to make sure folks understand is this is a change in the number that's on the application. It's not a change in the actual height of the building. So as we've been explaining it, the building point, the highest point is still in space at the exact place it is, So just that's a really important clarification that we're not adding 2.5 feet. We're not putting it higher. We have to make sure that the number on the application reflects accurately how the zoning ordinance is defined. Brad, am I saying that correctly?
No, you are, and one of the things that we actually discussed as well, maybe while we're taking this pause, this continuance, right? There's been a lot of feedback, throughout the neighborhood, based on the site visits that I've attended, right? Some of the questions that we've had from the counselors, Counselor O'Hara, some of the abutters, Denise Pascucci, Marianne Boucher, Patty Amaral, and others. And I think what we would like to do is recommend, right, to the committee, right? Because as you remember, when we were out there, we had some limitations in terms of how high up that pole we could physically get with the apparatus that we had, at our disposal. So what we would like to do, so that there's absolutely no confusion about this, is to be able to go out and remark those, right? So that everybody can clearly understand, kind of where the final grade is going to be, similar to what we have at the base of the pole right now. But then if you look up at the pole, and I think most of you are familiar with how those have been marked out, with the 2 black pieces of tape that are high on the 2 poles. And one of those poles, again, just because of what we had to work with, you had to assume that it was going to be 1 foot higher, right? And then on the back pole, it's going to be 3 foot higher, just based on the grade and again, the limitation. So I think that we can come up with a way, we've got a little time here to be able to go and reflect that accurately. So anybody who wants to go out and look at it, right, you don't have to go and make that leap of faith to go and say, oh, it's 1 foot higher than that mark or 3 foot higher than that mark or whatever, right? You can go out there and we'll develop a little legend so that everybody knows, and we'll use different colored tape so that this is what this color of tape means. This is what this color tape means, right? And then it should be hopefully more clear so that everybody can understand that no guesswork. And
Right.
with that, right, we're hopeful. We've got to make a couple of requests, but we're hopeful that we should be able to have all of that accomplished. And I'd like to propose, a potential date, through the chair, of course, of next Thursday, if that works for people. We should be able to have that taken care of by then. And then if you want to have subsequent, kind of follow-up site visits, if you'd like, right? We certainly make ourselves available to go and explain what everything on those polls are, because I think people had a lot of questions about that, and I understand that.
That's great. I'm going to first ask Council Holgram, because you had your hand up before, and then Council Pett, who has.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll defer to Councillor Pett first because he's the Ward 2 councillor. I had a very small question.
Okay.
Thanks, Jen. Just for the clarification, and I've said this about many issues, not just in relation to the school or anything else, but communicating and transparency is the most important thing. And I think, as you said, Brad, there was a lot of confusion with the markings that were there, and I understand the limits to the city's bucket truck, but it's obviously easy enough to get a 65-foot truck instead of a 45-foot truck. And I would like to ask that you come up with some sort of a definition that you can put up with Ben on the school website, etc., that has different colors that will show the different heights. And you might be able to mark it on the say on the website as, say, red line is the 46-foot mark that covers 70% of the building. Green is the 48-foot mark, and red is the blue is the 54-foot mark or whatever. Make those all very clear on the pole where they're going to be, so that the public will all be able to see them, and then obviously add it to a website, either the project website, the school's website, whatever, so that everyone will just have a clear idea of what's going on, so there's no confusion, et cetera. And we appreciate you bringing this all to light and responding to the questions and some of the emails we've gotten from some of our constituents.
And that's a
Councillor
great
Pett,
idea.
Councillor Pett, we have a great project website, and that's a very good use for it. So we'll
Great.
work together to do that. Thank you for that suggestion.
Terrific. And I'd also like to recommend that we actually have the option of a formal site visit, possibly on that Thursday, the 27th. We could do like we've been continuously doing for special council permits. We could have 3 sessions, maybe one at 4:30, one at 5, one at 5:30. And the 24 butters, you could call me to schedule one of those 3 sessions. And I'll first plug in the city councilors and then add a butters to that. So we can have the full opportunity for any of those who are interested in coming to attend and actually, walk around with us, look at the polls, and then conclude with knowing what your questions are. And I would be the scribe. And we'll add those to the existing list. The existing list of questions is probably 3 pages long. And what we will do is we'll put that in the packet for June 2nd, so you can see what questions have already come up. And then if you see things that we've missed, you can add to it, even if you see things. So Councilors Holgram and Pett, are you available on the 27th?
Yes.
Yes, I have just looked in my schedule and I am. And I hope that if Brad said they're going to be able to get this up by then, I just want to make sure that we're not pressing them scheduling site visits and then find out that it's not able to be done by that date. Are you pretty sure, Brad, that could be accomplished by that date?
I am, yeah, well, if all of a sudden in the, like the next day, 24 hours, I get a sense that we're not going to be able to, I will let Councilor Gilman know, but I think that we should be able to make that happen.
Good. Yeah, it really needs to be, because we want to, make sure we help this committee keep moving forward. The subcommittee here and Councilor Gilman, you've been a tremendous help in this process, and we appreciate it. Organizing the site visits, making sure we're getting questions from the public, and the questions have been very, very helpful, and we really appreciate those. And and the team here is ready to answer a lot of those questions tonight. But I think, as you said, it makes sense to have them all, after this next update here, because those questions have been great and helpful, and we really want to make sure we respond to all the questions and concerns that the neighbors have. So,
Okay.
Great.
And could we possibly have Greg Catamatore, our planning director, weigh in? Does this make sense to him to go within, our schedule of what's going on here?
Yeah, it does. And I would also kind of just clarify that this type of issue with the calculation of height is not uncommon because of our unique definition that we have. And Bill Sanborn is the one that interprets it, and very often has to sit down with folks. It doesn't matter the scale, the size of the project. It is fairly unique, and it's actually it also deals with, corners of buildings and which side of potentially sloping land has more corners than the other to kind of determine that average grade. So I think, a lot of communities base it on how a site is graded before construction. And ours is a little bit more particular than that. But I think, again, the representation that it's not changing how it will appear in terms of how it's been designed. It's really just a matter of the changing of the grade from its current condition. So clearly the importance of having an accurate representation is a good one for people to have a handle on that. And as Councilor Gilman has outlined, procedurally, how to revise the application and also get it back into public discussion sounds very reasonable.
Great. Thank you, Greg. So I have a couple more things that, go ahead, Councilor Holgram.
Thank you. And thank you, Greg, for that explanation. I'm still kind of trying to wrap my head around it as well. I just want to make sure that I'm clear on this. So the 56.5 feet is the total height. Is that right? And it calculated based on heights, different heights around the building? I apologize. I'm just trying to make sure that I understand this.
It's a fair question, Councilor. So
Brad, can you speak a little bit louder so we can hear you? Brad?
Can you hear me now?
Better, yeah, thank you.
Okay. So I said it's a fair question, and I think the way Greg described it is fairly accurate based on our experience. But so what it is it's the building height. If you actually went and looked at kind of walked in on the floor and measured it from the first floor to the highest point of the building, it will still remain at 54 feet, right? So the way your zoning ordinance, it talks about the average grade of basically the existing conditions. So your existing conditions, as many people have pointed out in their questions, right? Today, we are going to be filling. And so we've gone through and we've measured every corner now of the building, come up with that average grade, right? It doesn't change anything that we presented before. It doesn't change how we presented, notwithstanding, the interpretation, of the 1 foot on that pole that we've discussed before. All of that remains the same. It's just how it gets reflected, right, in that chart. And we want to make sure, right, that that's accurate, in terms of our application itself. So, for example, we were ready, and actually are ready, but we're going to push that off till June 2nd to show you shadow studies based on the actual building in location, based on the fill and all of that. None of that has changed, right? This is much more of just making sure that we have the accurate number in that particular column of the chart.
Okay. Thank you, Brad.
Thor? So let me just kind of bring this back together. First of all, I'd like to summarize to those who are on the call, and I see that there are 19 attendees. If you're in a butter and you'd like to join one of those 3 sessions on the 27th of May, one will be at 4:30, one will be at 5, one will be at 5:30. All you have to do is call me. You can email me at vgilman@gloucester-ma.gov. And I will, after we fill in for the city councilors, we will fill in the abutters, number 1. Number 2, I also would like to clarify, because there has been some misunderstandings, and it's understandable why it's a misunderstanding. But I wanted to mention to some of you that the standards to be applied, which is 1.8.3, is applied when we're dealing with use, and a height permit is not considered use. And that is how both Greg and Bill Sanborn has described this. And so I just want you to be aware that that's kind of extra information that was filled out in the application, but it's 3.1.6b that we are specifically looking at that's on the table. And so I want to make sure everyone is clear. And for those of you who have asked questions, your questions are good ones, and we understand why you asked them. And we are working better together as a result of your due diligence and looking at these things. And I just wanted to make sure that I thanked you for your due diligence. And in fact, 3.1.6b is easy to see in our zoning, and that's basically what is in front of us. So that's number 2. And then I think you're all clear that we're going to continue this until June 2nd. And the questions that are already in existence will all be in the packet for June 2nd, as well as any additional questions that come up at the site visit. And I will also say that if we don't fill up the 10 spots with abutters, you can call me the day before, and I can tell you if there's an extra spot that makes 10 for someone that might not be in a butter that is just interested in coming. I just don't want to go over 10 because of social distancing, and we still want to be vigilant. So that's how I would like to take this forward, if it's okay with Councilor Pat and Holgram.
Absolutely, Madam Chair. Thank you. And thank you for organizing all of that. I do see that Councilor O'Hara has his hand raised.
And I also see Tracy O'Neill, and I will take questions only. We're not going to discuss this. We have a quorum of the full council here tonight, and I will only entertain questions. So if Councilor O'Hara first has a question, Jamie, do you have a question for us?
Yes. Do you think, for the benefit of all of us, we're talking heights or elevations, can we get working drawings that show the actual elevations? I think it would be of the entire building. I think that will clarify to those who are not knowledgeable. It will help clarify that. So if that's possible, I think it would be of great benefit. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor O'Hara. I will refer that to Michelle or Brad. Do either one of you want to address that?
Sure, I can take that. So we absolutely can do that, Councilor O'Hara. And I guess one more thing too, there had been, I think, a number of questions that had asked about where you could review the plan. So in a section, right, with permission of the chair, Michelle will flash up on the screen if we can screen share. But I would just also like to give a little kind of description of where we are in the process, right? So I think we've said this before at public meetings that, the design is not yet complete. And so there have been questions about, where will we be able to go and view a bid set of documents? So the actual bid date for this project and when the design will be completed, right, and set out to bid will not be until October. So we won't actually have a full bid set of documents. But what we do have, and what are currently reflected on the website, right, are the progress plans, right, through design development, which is our most recent submission to the MSBA. And I think all of the information that you're looking for, Councilor O'Hara, would be available there. The elevations of the building that show the heights, building sections, landscape drawings, civil drawings, that whole set would be made available. It is already available on the project website. And to the extent, Councilor Gilman, that it's helpful to, have those printed out, I guess we could have those printed out. They are quite voluminous, but if that's something that's helpful to you, I'm certain that we can have that arranged.
Okay, thank you, Brad.
Can I just, if there is a request on that, I just want to be clear about, is it for printed copies of what? Or is it because as Brad has showed, and I can show on the website, the full sets, that's the full set to where the design is now is readily available on the project website. But there is a cost to making, multiple copies of the full set. And and I think the advantage of seeing it online is you can zoom in and actually read the thing, which is harder,
Right.
at least with my eyes, than a printed copy. Okay, so if there's a request on that or decision on that, if you can just be clear on what we mean by access or have a copy of a set, because it's hard to know these days if that means digital or otherwise.
Right. So Michelle, maybe you could show us, if you have that in front of you, like how people can get to this on the MSBA, on the website right now. Go ahead.
Michelle,
Michelle,
can
I
go to
can't
the
hear you,
website?
but could you describe how to find it?
Yes, so in the top of your screen there, you can see the website name. It's egvetsbuilding.gloucesterschools.com. And this page will pop up once you plug in that name. And if you go to the upper right-hand corner there, you'll see key documents. If you click on that, it'll bring you to the key documents page. And under this, you'll see reports and studies, and then you'll also see all of our MSBA submissions. So the top one is the DD submission. That's the latest submission that we've had. And then below that, the schematic design would have been the one before that. And then the preferred schematic was the first one that we submitted. Within that DD set, you will find the 3 documents that were submitted. So an entire set of drawings is available to you, our specifications, if anybody really wants to read those. And then there's also a binder available, which has project narratives that walk you through different parts of the project, including special ed programs and everything from our lead goals to all the narratives that we have going forward from our consultants. So that's how you get to it. All of it's there for you. Within those documents, if you have any questions, you can submit them to Val, and we'd be happy to address them during our next meeting.
So
And one more, I'm sorry, if you want updates, you can hit turn on updates, and you'll automatically be reminded every time we post something.
thank you. Superintendent Lemus, do you want to add anything to this?
No, I appreciate Michelle showing that and showing off our website, which has been revised and is much clearer and easier to navigate. And so thanks, Michelle. That was, I really appreciate that.
Great. So I see 4 hands raised. So I'm going to entertain questions, but please keep these. This is all on height, and this is all to do about our discussion in terms of preparing for June 2nd. And counselors, if we cannot allow for people to start deliberating, because that's unfair to the rest of the counselors that are not here. It's not our public hearing. So I'm going to start with Tracy O'Neill. Tracy, what is your question that you have regarding what you feel your needs are for a site visit? And you actually joined us on one of the site visits, which was great.
Yes,
So,
I did. Thank you very much for that. So one of my questions already got answered. It's the gloucesterschools.com. Is that the name of the website?
Mhm.
Okay, so that's answered one of my questions. The second question was, you mentioned May 27th. Is that a site visit? I wrote it down as a Zoom visit.
No, that's a site visit, May
All right, so
27th.
there's, all right, so
We're
the
gonna do-
Zoom,
we're gonna
the Zoom,
4:30, 5, and 5:30.
okay, so
um,
the,
Go ahead.
so the Zoom meeting is June 2nd
Mhm.
on Zoom, right?
Yep,
What, 5:30?
yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure I got that. Okay, that's question one. Question two, this is a silly question. The grade that will be added is, what is it?
Tracy had a tutorial that we all listened to at the site visit. So Brad, I think it's a great question. Would you mind just describing that right now for,
So the final grade elevation, essentially the pad under the building, right? First floor elevation is at 48 feet. And
Okay,
so as you remember, Tracy, when we were out there,
yep,
right, depends on where you're standing, right? On some spots, you might be adding 3 feet. Some spots, you might be adding 1 foot. It
Okay.
varies depending upon where you are.
okay, got it.
Great question.
Okay, so the highest point of the building will be 56.5 feet,
The-
correct?
The
Okay.
highest, the
Highest
fi-
point of the building will be 56.5 feet, right?
Well, yes and no. The actual building itself will be, if you put a tape measure from the first floor to the highest point, it will measure 54 feet. Okay, but based on how your zoning ordinance methodology is put together, right, in order to, and this is why we're making this change, right, that number needs to be 56.5 feet in your chart, which is based on the average existing condition grade, right, at all the corners of the building. So while the building may be 54 feet physically when it's in the built condition, right, your zoning ordinance, right, requires that we ask for a special permit at 56.5 feet.
So would the difference is 2.5 inches,
Feet.
feet, sorry, 2.5 feet. Would that be like what is added to the ground before you put the building in place?
Depending upon where you are, on average, it's 2.5 feet, correct,
Okay,
from the existing grade to build you up to that 48-foot base elevation that we've discussed.
okay. Okay, so now this question is for Michelle at Durham Whittier. You told me to hold off on the question that I asked last night and to ask you tonight. It's regarding the 10 parking spaces on Webster Street.
So,
There's a drawing that from Durham Whittier that shows a blue line, which I was told is a fence, right? That comes up to Webster Street, comes all the way up to Webster Street, and then it cuts out those parking spaces, and then it goes back to Webster Street.
Tra-
So when we were at the site,
Madam
when,
Chairperson,
wait a minute,
is this
wait a
not
minute,
supposed to
wait,
be-
I need to finish my train of thought, okay?
It's
Tracy,
When
this
we
is
were
not,
at the
is
site
not
visit,
appropriate.
this is not a hot, this is, we
wait,
have
wait,
to-
I was told last night to ask tonight, and now you're gonna make me wait another week. They're not right. I was told, Michelle, please help me. You told me that you would answer this question for me tonight. Is that, do you remember?
So I'll actually speak for Michelle,
No.
who's right next to me here. And while
Didn't
that may
finish
have been the
my-
case,
I didn't even finish
It's-
my question.
This is inappropriate for the discussion at this
Right.
meeting by our
my-
requirements. I'm sorry, Tracy. It's
But
not
I
that,
was told
Michelle is
last
not-
night-
Michelle
I
is-
was told
What I-
Michelle
last
is
night,
not,
We will not
Michelle and
answer your
Brad are
question.
not part. I'm sorry, Michelle and Brad are not on the Planning and Development Committee. They don't make those rules. They may have made that honest comment to you for you to ask, but that's not a subject that we're allowed to discuss this evening.
Oh
I'm
my
sorry.
God. Will you be allowed to discuss it on June 2nd?
Yes,
And you're my ward counselor. Thank you.
yes,
Thanks a lot
yes.
for nothing. Shame on you.
Tracy, we've attributed your good questions to real positive momentum here. So let's try to move forward in the spirit of being good colleagues. And,
That's what I was told to do last night.
okay, well, you know, if you want to talk to Michelle privately, you can, but this is not in front of us right now, and we need to move on. So if you send me your question, I can send it to Michelle and she can deal with your question uniquely, and we'll make sure that you're satisfied. Okay, is that a fair compromise?
I would rather other people who are on the call listen to the answer, because I was told that the hill was not going to be touched, but the schematic shows that the fence goes all the way to Webster Street.
Okay, we need to move on, Tracy. I'm
I know.
sorry. But your question will get answered by Michelle.
When?
So
When?
the next person that's had their hand raised the longest is Louise Palazzola. So Louise, what is your question? Would you state your name and your address, please? Thank you. And unmute yourself. Thank
Can
you.
hear me now?
Yep, we can. Thank you.
I have a question that I don't know if it's an impossible thing to do. I happen to see the lines, somebody sent me a picture of all the rope or whatever it is that is up there. Are they metal pieces and are they going to stay up? That's a part of the question. But what are they made of? And the reason I'm asking that question is because, as you know, my sister-in-law is the next house up on the left-hand side, right next to the school. And she's not capable to ask any of these questions or do this. At the top of the building, where you've got the ropes at say 54 feet or 56 feet, is there a possibility, I don't know what the lines are made of, so that's why I'm asking this in kind of a crazy way. Is there a possibility that at the top corner, there could be something put up, which is going to be at the top now, and at the corner, I don't care if it's a sheet or two sheets going around the corner, if they could be tacked on, so people can see, they can see the exact spot of what they are not going to see anymore. Do you understand what I'm saying? Could something be put up at the top? I'm not saying go all the way down and build a whole building, even if it's two navy blue king size sheets, to just go across so people can see what they're actually looking at. I saw the lines, I can understand the lines, but it doesn't say anything. It doesn't block the view because you can still see the tree lines, you can see everything. So is there something that Brad Dorr, your company, can do to put something there? I mean, she's not capable of going out and being with you and all that stuff, but she sure can see out of her windows.
I'm going to defer this to Council Holgram. She's had her hand raised.
Thank you. I was wondering if maybe the shadow study would help demonstrate that. And I don't know if sharing it this evening would be appropriate, but if that would help.
All right, can I just say something about that? And I think it was Barry Pett that mentioned this. The study that you showed the opposite side, the back side of the building. We want to see the shadowing at the front side of the building, number one. Okay, I don't know if you did that, but you're showing people a picture, and a picture with that is not worth to me 1,000 words. So that's why I said if my sister-in-law could see what the corner is going to look like, she'll know that she's blocked. You know what I'm saying? It's, she's definitely going to be looking at a big wall, but it's so high, they have no clue what 54 feet is going to be.
So Louise, let me just speak to this, because I've been thinking a lot about the boundaries, and you're now going to have an actual marking on the pole that is exact. It's not going to be within 2 or 3 feet. It's going to be exact.
We
And
can't do that. Sorry,
and that
Val.
will be discussed. And I guess my concern would be if we start trying to put on these poles sheets and markations, I don't want to put any worker at risk. I mean, when somebody's got to be 60 to 80 feet up on a bucket truck or a police ladder, I think I'm really comfortable going as far as putting a bright colored line exactly where we're looking. And I'm really not comfortable asking someone to go up and simulate a darkness in the edge of a pole that might be an additional 20 feet up. It just, I just can't see us putting any worker at risk.
And
So
yet you let the developer go up there and build that high. I mean, Val, this is talking about 2 sheets. So I'm just
Okay.
asking.
All
that.
right.
And
Well,
if it's something they can do, I would
Yeah.
appreciate it for my in-laws. That's all I'm asking. 2 sheets,
okay,
$20, tie them to the top. That's all I care about. I think that would help them see the height. And if you're bringing a bucket truck up there, try to do that for them. I appreciate that.
okay.
that's
So let's see, the next person that has a hand up was in order of when they've come in, I think is Pam Steele. Pam, would you introduce yourself and ask your question and what street what you live on? Thank you.
Yes, Pam Steele, 10 Pilots Hill. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I tried to get on last night because I had a couple of questions, but I have a different one for tonight. If this is inappropriate, just tell me and I'll apologize and leave. I'm concerned about the shadowing.
Okay.
I've been studying shadowing since a development was going to be put in my neighborhood. So I feel like I'm pretty knowledgeable. Plus I've been places looking at shadowing.
Pam, what is your question?
The
Not what
question is, can you show shadowing a little in more depth so that we can really see what the actual shadowing is? I didn't find it informative and I've been at every single meeting.
and I think you.
And
I
that's
think
relative to height too.
Yeah, so Councilor Pett and Councilor Holgram specifically asked for more detail, and we are going to actually show that at the next meeting, and it will be very specific. And they've definitely elaborated on what you initially saw at our first P&D meeting. So we're grateful to that. So
Thank you very much. I
yeah.
appreciate all the effort you're putting into this.
Thank you.
You're
I'm
welcome.
glad that you were able to ask a question.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask Ben Blanchard. You were one of the only abutters that came on the tour. It was the site visit that Council Holgram led last Friday. So what is your question about this height site visit, or what we're going to talk about on June 2nd?
Yeah, just if once so your committee, this planning and development has to just, you can decide whether to grant the special permit or not. Is that true?
We make a recommendation to the full committee, and then at the full committee, there's another public hearing. There's a public hearing where we'll listen to the people in favor and the people that are opposed. And then we make our final decision. After we have a full public hearing.
I see. Thank you. I also wanted to thank Councilor Pett and for recommending that we put a specific line where it's supposed to be. I thought about it today. I said, with all the money in this project and development, that they couldn't put an actual line where the actual line is supposed to be was quite surprising to me. So I really appreciated that. Secondly, James O'Hara, I wanted to thank him because I was hoping for something to take away from the visit so that I could physically look at it. I'm requesting that maybe somebody could supply me with maybe 5 of those elevations. I don't need all of them, because my neighbors, for example, last night, Rich tried to attend, but he has an old computer and he didn't have a microphone. That was the problem. His tenant above couldn't do it either. So a lot of my neighbors don't have access to Zoom. They don't even know what it is. They don't have a computer. So if I could get some of this material so I could bring it to them so that I could actually show them what's going on. You know, unfortunately, we live in these times and these Zooms, it's amazing, but you know, a lot of my neighbors can't afford them. And also unfortunately, they also work after, they work evenings, so they can't attend some of these meetings. So.
Excuse me, Ben, could Brad or Michelle answer whether if they go to the website and look at that, can he then print out the plans, or would that have to be done on a larger scale? In other words, would they physically large? They wouldn't fit on a piece of paper to be visible or something, or and would you be able to provide a limited number of copies to distribute maybe at the next site visit?
So maybe, Councilor Pat, as we did at the last site visit, you know, we brought out some copies of that in some larger format. And I think that was relatively effective, right? And I guess I would ask, right, Ben, if you'd like to get elevations, if we kind of gave you a north, south, east, west take of the building, would that be sufficient for you?
Absolutely. Yeah, that way when we get together, I can show them, and they can, because they have so many questions for
Yeah.
me. And it's hard, you know, obviously I'm trying to.
So
do the
what
best I can.
we'll do is we'll do that then, if that's acceptable to the chair.
I think
Then
that's terrific. I think
what we
Ben's
can also
offering
do-
to walk around with it. You know, I think that I'm very comfortable with that. So I think that's a good solution.
And
Thank you.
what we can also do, Ben, for you is we'll actually, you know, we've referred to dimensions like the academic wing being at 46 feet, and then the high point of the building at the entry at 54 feet, and then the gymnasium being at 48 feet, right? And coincidentally, right, elevation and height in some of these instances are the same. So it can be somewhat confusing. So what we'll do is we'll actually dimension those elevations for you for those particular heights, the 46, the 48, and the 54. So that way, if you're speaking with, you know, some of your neighbors, it should be, you know, fairly understandable.
That'd be really helpful. Thank you.
Great.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for being on the call, Ben.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Next person is Patty Amaral. Patty, will you introduce yourself and your street and ask your question? Thank you.
Getting tired of standing here.
Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so my question is, and I sent an email to Barry, Val, and Jen about this. You know, really, so, you know, everyone doesn't know this stuff, but what is the difference between a height variance and a special permit?
So I can answer that. This is a special council permit, and city councilors are responsible for 3.1.6B, which is anything in excess of 35 feet, and that's what is in front of us. Okay, the confusion that we had, and you were one of 3 or 4 that were confused and legitimately confused, is that in our packet, in our application, there's also an option for people to fill out 1.8.3, which is standards to be applied. And that is for use only. So we really don't need people to be filling that out. We could just eliminate it if we wanted to, because it's not necessary. What is in front of us is 3.1.6B. There are some criteria, 3.1.6B, just to read it, there's some criteria that is very consistent with 1.8.3, the standards to be applied. And basically it says that building heights in excess of 35 feet may be authorized by special permit issued by City Council. Said permit shall contain such conditions as the council deems necessary and shall only issue upon a written determination by the council that such increase in allowable height is consistent with neighborhood character and will not be substantially detrimental to the neighborhood because of obstruction of views, overshadowing of other properties, impairment of utilities, or other adverse impact. So that is what is in front of us. That is our requisite criteria that we are going to be either approving or not for height. So I hope that answers your question, Patty. It was a good one. And like I said,
Well, I have another question.
okay, go
Why
ahead.
does one project need that and another one doesn't? Why does this, I don't understand. One
Greg,
project needs one permit and this project needs another permit. Why is that?
well, Greg, maybe you can answer that. You're the planning director and understand this.
I'm not exactly sure what the question is.
Why does one project need the 1.1, whatever it was? And why does this project need the 3.1B?
Sure, I could try to respond to that. So there are very specific standards that are applied to what are called use permits. And so you can imagine there are things that you're allowed to do without involving the city council, the zoning board, sometimes even without the Conservation Commission. So those as of right uses don't have any additional standards applied to them. The use tables also identify uses that require a special permit. In those instances, there are additional criteria that any special permit granting authority, either the city council or the zoning board, or in some instances, the planning board applies. There's a specific section in the zoning ordinance that deals with height. And so height is actually considered an exception rather than a variance, which was something that was mentioned. And in that case, there's specific criteria that are outlined in that section alone, because the section of section 1 only applies to use table special permits. So those are the various things, that can include hotels or other uses that have been determined to require a special permit. Those are the standards that apply to them.
Okay. I guess I'm gonna have to repaint my sign that I'm standing on the corner with. I want to ask you, where are you getting the fill? What kind of fill you use and where are you getting it?
Council Holgram has her hand raised. Go ahead.
I don't believe this is the topic we're addressing this evening.
Okay,
Patty.
okay, how
Sorry.
about one more?
Thank
Okay, so
you.
how about this? When you sent the neighborhood information to everybody, was it in different languages? Was it only in English?
So it was not in different languages.
Yeah, we talked about this in the beginning because, geez, I know from working there,
Okay.
volunteering for over 23 years, that
Right.
we
So-
have such a diverse neighborhood there. And Ben's talking about how neighbors aren't even,
Patty-
some of these people don't have computers. So what are we doing about this as a city?
So Patty, here's the deal with site visits, okay? And let me just be clear, okay? Site visits are not open meetings. They're meetings that are allowed, that don't have to be posted, that they're meetings specifically for the city council. And we have taken on a tradition here where we try to, even during social distancing, allow up to 10 people, including abutters, to participate. These are not open meetings. We are doing this because we want to be as inclusive as we can.
Absolutely.
And what I decided to do the last time was I actually hand delivered these the abutters flyers because we didn't have a lot of time between the dates, and I walked around and hand delivered them. And and now you have an opportunity. All of you are on this call. You know when the meetings are.
How about if someone doesn't have a computer? Then they
But
don't.
wait a sec, Patty, the site visit now is going to be on May 27th, and we're going to have 3. One is at 4:30, one is at 5, one is at 5:30. And I'm asking anyone to call me, that's in a butter, to put their name on one of those 3 times. And so if you know that you have an abutter that does not speak English, help us out, because you know who those folks are. And I mean, I just don't know. I mean, if you want us to think about a flyer with 2 or 3 different languages.
Oh,
and
yeah, because we
walk
talked
around.
about that in the beginning, and Mr. Lummis could do that. He has the means to reach out to the among these parents, as we know, 65% of them
But this is not,
get free lunch and all that, so they're there, they live there. This is who it's gonna affect.
okay, so I'm not quite sure where to go with this, but,
I know, it's
you know,
just really difficult. It's
I
just really sad. It's really
I
hurts my
understand your
heart.
ask, Patty. What I'll try to do is I'll develop a flyer with 2 or 3 different languages, and we will walk around with it.
Madam
And-
Chairman,
Yeah.
Madam
go ahead,
Chairman,
Councilor Pat.
please, let me step in here. I appreciate everything that Patty is saying in relation to all of the neighbors in the neighborhood, et cetera, and the diversity that's there.
Transparency, yeah.
As Patty, please, let me finish, please. Okay? But Chairperson Gilman, in this case, as she has said, this is not an open process. This is something that as the P&D community chaired by Councilor Gilman has decided to add and invite abutters to be able to come and join to ask some questions and to view things. This is not a requirement. She has gone out of her way.
Oh, we
to
thank
do-
her, but it gets his, that's what it's all about.
Please, again, let me finish. Okay? She has gone out of her way, and I think I don't ask that. I don't think she should be creating a flyer in different languages, et cetera. I think if whether it's you, Patty, or
Well, I
anyone
could
else.
do that, sure, you want me to do
Again,
that.
please, just let me finish, please. Okay, whether it's you, whether it's someone else, or someone that would like to contact Councilor Gilman about getting notices and then distributing them to other members of the neighborhood, that's fine. But I believe that Chairperson Gilman in this case has gone way above and beyond in involving abutters and neighbors in part of our process that's intended for counselors, not intended for the general public. The
Oh, so
general
this
public
isn't-
will
I'm
have the
confused.
opportunity, again, please, just let me finish.
Okay, I'm confused.
Again, the general public will have the opportunity when we get to the full city council to do all those things. And maybe it's appropriate for a flyer to be put out prior to that full city council meeting. But I am just sitting here and defending and agreeing with Council Gilman. I don't think you have to do
You don't
that.
have to
I'm
you don't
sorry.
have to defend
Thank you,
anybody, Barry. We are all in this together, aren't
Okay.
we?
I know.
Thank you
we are,
very much.
Patty.
No, I really appreciate it. And I'm just trying to make sure, I know that there's a lot of people that need that help. And so I will take that flyer. I will learn how to do it in two or three different
Madam
languages.
Chair,
Terrific.
I think it would be a very good idea, in agreement with you. I think that you and Councillor Pett both made excellent points. This is not a P&D meeting. It is a site visit. It is intended for the P&D committee and other city councilors and abutters, but I do agree with Patty, considering the diverse makeup of the neighborhood. I think we should do a trilingual flyer. I think that it should be in English, Spanish, and Portuguese.
Wonderful.
And if you need help, I would be happy to help. I certainly know a lot of Spanish-speaking people. I know fewer Portuguese-speaking people, but I think that if we do a flyer, it should come from P&D.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you, Jen. Because that's where my heart is.
Okay.
And I know,
So Jen, I'll let you take the initiative to interpret that into 3 Spanish, Portuguese, and what was the third?
English.
Okay.
Portuguese.
I can-
That's
I can
exactly
help
what I
with
wrote
the
down.
English. But anyway, all right. So
Okay,
thank you.
great. Thank you
Patty.
so much. See, look at that. Look at how we work together here. Look at
Getting to yes, Patty. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Patty Page, introduce yourself and your street and what is your question?
Hi, Val, thank you. Patty Page, 3 Tidal Cove Way. I'm about the height variance exception, however you're classifying that. And pardon me, I don't follow all these meetings, but did they do a float balloon test for the height? where they did that over at the building that was proposed for the marina. They can float balloons very easily, safely, give the
So-
people some idea where you're gonna place the top of this building and not
Yeah.
go over the 2.5 feet would be,
So-
would be my
So
idea.
So Patty, it's a great question, but balloons just don't work. They blow all over the place. On a windy day, they don't work. We tried to use those at one Folly Point Road, and it was difficult at best.
And
What
we did not use it at the marina
we did
building.
not,
As you
exactly.
said,
What
we
at the
used
marina,
physical lifts.
Oh,
we
that's,
had-
pardon me, you're right, Barry. It was,
We had
I think, it was-
lifters and we had 3 of the corners marked. And then we moved one of them to the middle to show the apex of the building. So we worked as closely as we could with the details that were required. So anyway, hope that answers your question.
oh, wait a minute, hold, well, if whatever mechanism was used at the marina building, that was deemed safe, they couldn't do it over here and replicate it? I heard you. I
The
heard you
marina
concerned for the
building, Patty, the issue with the marina building is that the marina had all that equipment on site. They have that because of sailboats and everything else. So for us to have to rent the city 3 lifters and bring them to the site is just an insurmountable requirement. What we
yeah.
plan on doing is using the existing poles that are huge, and we're going to mark the top and we're going to mark the ground, and we're going to be clear what we're talking about. And I think those in itself will be a clear indicator of how tall the building is at the different corners. So hopefully that helps.
All right, and I would like to make a comment about the access here, particularly the remote access. You are dealing with an environmental justice neighborhood over there. And if these people don't have the remote access, there should be some kind of accommodation. Within 2 weeks, apparently everything is going to be open now. And weather is good. They should make some accommodation to communicate with these people. I appreciate the flyer in the various languages. That's just the minimum that should be done to involve these people. I also like to ask Doreen Whittier. I noticed, I don't see the young gentleman Joshua on, but during one of the meetings, I asked for the animated traffic study to come back, to be revisited and represented. He said that he recognized it, had the software. That's not been done. Can we get an answer on that from Doreen Whittier, please?
Patty, that would be something you'd need to take offline, because that's not what we have in front of us right now. Right now we have height in front of us. We have 3.1.6.
I understand, but I can't, I know, Val, and I know I was gonna cross the line, but I can't chase all these meetings. So maybe I could just get an email. I think I have Joshua's email. I'll just email him direct. That's fine. I appreciate it, Val.
Thank you, Patty. And
No problem.
I love your participation in the call, so thank you.
You might
I
be the only
really
one.
do. You're my constituent, and you make me be a better counselor because your questions are always great.
You
So
do a very good job, Val. As
Thank
best
you.
you can. Thank you.
So we need to keep moving because this is taking a long time. We have 5 other items tonight. So I'm going to ask Marianne Boucher, please, if you could be really brief and ask your question, because we do need to keep moving forward on this. So go ahead, ask your question. That would be great. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Val. Marianne Albert Boucher, 93 Mount Pleasant Avenue. I would just like to ask if you are going to do a shadowing study on this, will you be giving the neighbors, the abutters, the general public ample time to review the shadowing prior to the June 2nd meeting?
This will be shown on the June 2nd meeting. That's when the applicants are going to review it with us. And then there'll be a pause in order to wait for the public hearing. So at the point of June 2nd, it will be on the Zoom call and you'll be able to see it. And then the public hearing will be It depends on the.
Is that on
average-
Is that on June 8th? June 8th, the city council public hearing?
I'd
that
have to
I
ask our city
understand it?
clerk.
Okay,
Because we have to notice it, and so I can't tell you right now. It all depends on where things
Okay.
go and in us advertisement in the newspaper.
well, thank you very much for being so gracious this evening.
Thank you, Mary Ann. All right, Denise, what name and address, and what is your question?
Hello, I'm sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can. Thank you, Denise.
Yes, hi, Denise Piscucci, 20 Birch Grove Heights. And first of all, I want to say thank you for reading my letter and acknowledging my concerns about the height. I have been down the field. I have seen where those 45-foot marks are listed, and yes, it is kind of deceiving that it's not really telling us the true story. The one thing I would like to ask is, can you also put on that pole the 30 feet so we can see where the 30 feet is and where the 54 feet is, so we can see the difference? Is that possible? We're asking for that special permit for the difference, so I'd like to see where the 30 feet is and where the 54. So on the same pole where you're asking for the 40 and the 46, 48 and 54.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Council Holgram has her hand raised, so go ahead, Council Holgram.
Thank you, Denise. I think that's a great question. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to make sure, in regard to the 30 feet, Denise, do you mean 35 feet because the height exception is for 35 feet?
Okay, I'm sorry. I guess maybe
That's okay.
But isn't it zoned for 30, but you have to ask for the permit after 35? Is that correct?
Well, it's 35 for the city council and it's 30 for zoning board of appeals. 30
Understood.
But we're not
Okay.
the zoning appeals, right?
Right.
No, we're for the city council. So for the city council, it's 35 and up.
Okay, that's to get the permit, but the actual zoning in the area is 30.
Yes.
I just want to see the difference of what we're talking about. Obviously, that neighborhood has a height limit for a reason, and I'd like to see the difference. So if that could be done, it would be great to see this pole. And I know you said you could put the 40 feet and the 45 at the different levels. I'd like to see the 30 feet. Obviously, if you want to mark 35, because that's where the permit goes, but really it's 30 and 54. Is that correct? Are the two numbers that are most valuable?
It's 30 and 56.5.
Okay.
Because we just modified that because we're going to amend section 3.2 of the dimensional table. So,
okay.
So I guess I will leave that up to the applicant, but your point is heard, and thank you, Denise. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I appreciate that. And that, like I said, I want to thank you all for letting me send that in, because I do think it makes most sense for people to look down that field and see what we're talking about.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Denise. And the last person that has a hand raised is CK. So if you could introduce yourself and where you live, and that would be great. And it's questions only on the matter of height.
It's Kelvin Klein.
Thank you, Barry. So could you unmute yourself, CK? Diane Cuddy. Okay, great. Introduce yourself and your street, Diane.
So I don't have a question. I'm presenting for National Grid.
Madam Chair.
Oh.
Madam Chair.
Okay. So you did, you're not, we're not on the poll petition yet. So
right.
I think we're all
Madam
set.
Chair.
Okay, but you're now a panelist, Diana, which is great. Thank you. We saw you before you were the first one on our call, and you've been
Right.
waiting patiently. So thank you so much.
Okay, I don't know why I'm on here twice. So I just noticed
Okay.
that.
Well, as long as there's no echoing, I think you're okay.
Okay.
So anyway, counselors, I'm happy to where we've come, because I think we've listened to the public. We've been able to incorporate more questions, a more specific site visit, and I think that that's really important. So I'd like to thank all of you for being so honest and for participating in the democratic process And we now have 19 attendees and most of you participated. So thank you so much. So Counselors Holgram and Pat, are we ready to move on to the next order of business? Counselor Pat, go ahead.
Yeah, again, I'd like to thank, all the attendees and the questions that they asked along the way. And I would just ask that we, continue to have a civil discussion. If we have, procedures and requirements to follow, whether it's through the school department, the planning department, the building department, the city council, the administration, or anything else, I think we need to remain cordial and not get confrontational in some of this. All the input we take in is very important, and it helps us make a decision, but it doesn't do us any good if we are just getting into confrontations with people about things that may be procedural in nature, not answering, things relevant to actual subjects. So thank you for sort of controlling this evening, and I'm happy that we're able to get some further information from the applicant that'll be clearer to all of the abutters and neighbors and everything else next week.
Great. Thank you, Council Pat. Council Holgram, you have your hand raised.
I just wanted to quickly thank everyone, and Madam Chair, I want to compliment you on the way you ran this meeting. Thank you, and to all the attendees. But I see that Superintendent Lummis had his hand raised, but thank you very much. This was a rigorous and robust discussion, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Counselor. Superintendent.
I just want to do the same thing, which was, just really acknowledge and appreciate the chair and the work of the subcommittee. You are going really above and beyond, Chair Gilman, to respond to folks, to be responsive, to be accessible, to help people answer questions. I'm glad we're part of it, but as the applicant and representing, all of our schools, our students who will benefit from this project, our teachers who will benefit from the project, the community that will benefit from this project, I just really appreciate your openness, your thoroughness, but also your flexibility and generosity in terms of making sure people have the time to get their questions answered, making sure they can come to site visits. I just really, really appreciate it. I hope folks do. It's not always the case in other communities that folks are operating this way. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Superintendent. Much appreciated. And thank you to Michelle Rogers and Brad Dorr from Dorr and Whittier. Appreciate all your help in trying to get all these questions answered as well.
Thank
So
you.
good night to the three of you, unless you want to stay on and talk about poll petitions and accessory units. So good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next order of business is RZ 2021-002, amend GZO section 5.24, accessory in-law dwelling units and associated definition in section 6, definitions in accordance with GZO section 1.11.2a. And this has been continued from May 5th, 2021. And we're delighted that Greg Cadamatori, our planning director, is here and ready to walk us through this. So Greg, take it away. Thank you.
Good evening, councilors. Greg Cadamatori, the planning director. If it's all right, I can share my screen.
Please do.
Okay, I put it together a brief presentation and I cut it down even further in the interest of time. So you may have recalled a presentation that I made in the early winter or midwinter about the various efforts that have been coming out of the housing production plan implementation group, and then also through the arm of the planning board in initiating amendments. So I'm going to cover, our focus is definitely accessory dwelling units this evening, but I just wanted to do a brief overview of kind of how we got here, some of the things that we've been working on, reiterating the housing production plan goals. I'll provide you some examples of ADUs. Some of them actually kind of exist now in that we already have an accessory in-law apartment ordinance. which really the nuanced difference between those and what's being proposed is they would no longer be restricted to being rented to family members. So we actually have examples in the community now. There are probably several dozen of them in the community that have been permitted over the years. And they would take on a very similar look and functioning, other than they'd be available to a broader potential population of folks renting. Then I'll kind of get into the nuts and bolts of the proposed ordinances. There's kind of three places of the ordinance that we're touching. One, a definition for an ADU, then the actual ordinance itself that describes what's allowed and how they're permitted, and then the use table that we talked about earlier this evening that'll define where they're allowed and how they're allowed. And then I'm going to touch on some of the public comment at the planning board and their recommendation that you've received. They did recommend all of the proposed language that was forwarded to the council and referred out for public hearing in its form. But I think there's some additional opportunity for some discussion around public comment. And if you're taking testimony this evening, that's great. Otherwise, it's something that could also be addressed at the city council's public hearing on this. So again, the highlights of the housing production plan that we conducted with the help of MAPC, the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. We looked at our needs assessment, developed some goals and policies, and then strategies to increase the supply of housing and of affordable housing units. And so this is really a proposal that kind of deals with certainly supply, and in some ways may deal with affordability, just in terms of as we increase the supply, that may translate to more affordable rent. These units are fairly modest in size as well. So, you know, that can have an impact. So it's kind of, you hear a lot of discussion about big A affordability and little a. Again, anything that's going to increase the supply and opportunity should hopefully in some ways address affordability, or at least availability, which kind of circles back to the housing need. You know, some of the other highlights that an ADU may specifically address is, we know that our population is aging. We know that, you know, folks seem to be having harder and harder time affording to stay in the community for a variety of reasons. So these units will create not only an opportunity potentially for an existing homeowner to move into a smaller unit and rent the larger part of a house, or vice versa, just having additional income in having an available rental unit to help defray their housing cost. So how do ADUs kind of address back to the goals? I'm not going to go through all 10 of them, but again, it's just kind of creating opportunities to develop a diverse and affordable housing stock to meet the needs of the changing demographic and profile in the city. Again, a different type of housing that we don't really have right now, other than more restricted in-law apartments. It, you know, could create an opportunity for just a different type of housing out there, increasing the rental stock. Identify sites that are most appropriate to accommodate Gloucester's needed growth in housing. Again, we're kind of working within the built environment rather than greenfield development. There's plenty of accessory structures out there right now that may be readily converted. So there's, you know, in some instances, there may be a lower cost to create an additional unit because we're working off of the built infrastructure, either a portion of a house or potentially a detached unit. Minimize the displacement of lower income or cost burden households. Again, we hear a lot about the difficulty of, you know, either older couples or single persons in households having the difficulty of trying to maintain the cost of owning a single family home. And so this may create an opportunity there. As well as one of the things that we always try to do in everything that we do, the health department does, really all the city departments, is promote safe and healthy housing and living. So there may be opportunities where there's a structure that might be being used for this purpose right now illegally. You know, if someone were to then permit that unit, have the life, health, and safety issues associated with them, it would be legitimized and also promote safe and affordable, safe housing. So just examples, these are some graphics from different presentations that have kind of really centered on this. As you know, the state just went through a pretty comprehensive bill that was passed towards the end of the last year, beginning of this year, that started to actually define what an ADU is, provided a definition, a permitting path for it, and it's really being promoted as an opportunity of increasing the rental housing stock. So again, some examples, these could be struck above garage structures. They could be standalone at grade without a garage in kind of a rear yard setting, or potentially more commonly, in a portion of a single family home, whether built into a basement or built in next to an existing single family home as a either attached or interior. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. So here's kind of a real life example. This is actually pulled from a building file of what would be termed either an attached or interior accessory dwelling unit. So this is an existing home. These are the lines of the home. A proposal came to the building department to put an addition above the garage and kind of dormer out the second floor to create an accessory in-law unit. Again, there really would be no difference between what we permit now, other than the restriction on who could be renting the unit. And we also have a little bit more of a size limitation on the in-law apartment right now, which would be a little bit expanded, and also to be consistent with the state's definition of what an ADU is. And so there's a real life example. If you're driving down the street, you'd probably never know it, but there's a unit that's a secondary or accessory unit in that house that's available to family members right now. Again, this might be the example of something that could then be marketed to the general public as a housing unit. Another example, different setting, you'd never know it, but there's an accessory unit within that structure as well. And one of the things that this ordinance also will start to get into is the detached. So this is something new for Gloucester for sure. There probably are some in existence. There are definitely examples of lots in Gloucester that have two structures that predate zoning that might have additional dwelling units and accessory structures. And this would create a permitting path for the conversion of things like the space above garages, or potentially a brand new detached unit in the rear yard of an existing single family home lot. And these are just some examples from the internet, so no credit given anywhere, what they might look like. That looks like it might be in the Midwest, I'm not sure. So to get to the actual ordinance amendments themselves, a definition has been provided, which would be an accessory dwelling unit. Is a separate dwelling unit inside. I have to minimize you all so I can't see you, so I can see my screen. Unit located inside a detached single family dwelling, an interior ADU, or a detached building located on the same lot as a detached single family dwelling, a detached ADU, as an accessory and in subordinate use to the principal dwelling and held in the same ownership as the principal dwelling. A lot of language there, definition. So again, these could be within an existing single family home or as a detached unit on a single family lot. I will say there was a lot of discussion about whether this should be something that also might be permitted on a two-family lot. That starts to get into a discussion of, that's really 3 units. Does each one get to have one? So this is kind of defined to an accessory to a single family. Somebody always has the opportunity to avail themselves in most districts to build a two-family, which would have less restriction associated with it. Could be created as a condominium. This is, again, something to be accessory to a single family and would not be allowed to be separated by ownership. So I don't know if you want to take the 3 pieces and take questions, or do you want me to just run through the whole presentation and take questions at the end?
Councilors Holgram and Pett, do you have a preference? Go ahead, Councilor Holgram, you're on mute.
I'm sorry, actually, I don't. I had a question, but I would like to hear whether Councilor Pett and you, Madam Chair, would like to keep moving on or take a break for questions now.
Okay.
I don't have any questions, I've sort of reviewed it. I'm I'm sort of ready to move right along here. So
Okay, I'll keep rolling. I'll keep rolling.
So keep rocking and rolling. And I
Okay.
do want to recognize Dave Holden from the Housing Authority is on the call, which is great to see. And Kathy Clancy, who is on the school committee, is on the call as well. So.
Okay, so again, so now this is the actual, some excerpts from the actual language of the proposed section 524 accessory dwelling units. And the purposes are to create an opportunity for accessory dwelling units in Gloucester's residential neighborhoods, increase diverse housing options while respecting the residential character of Gloucester's neighborhoods, add rental units to Gloucester's housing, encourage more economic and energy efficient use of the city's housing supply, and provide homeowners with a means of obtaining rental income to defray housing costs. So I think those are all very clear and specific. Again, this is a new option, a little bit of a morph of the in-law apartment for interior. And I think the most kind of new association with this is that of the detached ADU. So this kind of articulation of what it actually can be, how big it can be, where it can be, and how it's calculated is now consistent with the state's definition as well. There were amendments to Chapter 40A. Our definition that we had been discussing while this was being drafted and discussed at the planning board level was a little bit nuanced, a little bit different. And the decision was prior to initiating the amendment to kind of really marry it to the state's definition. So an accessory dwelling unit shall be a maximum of 50% of the habitable floor area of a single family dwelling, or 900 square feet, whichever is less. So as you can see how that works, it kind of scales to the size of the existing structure, where, if you had a 2,000 square foot, you have a certain allowance. If you were beginning with 1,000 square foot, again, it would be a smaller accessory unit because it's whichever is less. And garages, unfinished attics, basements, common entries, porches, and decks do not get included in the calculation of floor area of the principal dwelling. So it's really focused on the core use of the existing home as a dwelling unit, and that's how that calculation would work its way through. Once an ADU has been added to a single family dwelling lot, the ADU may not be enlarged beyond the size limitations by this section. So there's a lot of specificity in, kind of the guidelining of what this is, because again, these uses are being proposed to be allowed as of right. So long as you comply with these requirements, the process would be administered through the building permit process, through the building inspector's office, in consultation with the planning office as well. And then there are provisions for a detached ADU. Again, it kind of has the same limitations placed upon it, and in terms of referencing back to the principal dwelling on the lot. And then there are some additional dimensional requirements, in particular for the construction of that last paragraph there. Construction of detached ADU, the building shall comply with the district's minimum setback requirements for accessory structures. The maximum height of the building shall be 20 feet if the structure meets the normal accessory building setbacks, or 24 feet if the structure meets the normal principal dwelling setbacks. So there's a little bit, as you walk through the ordinance, there's provisions that are dealing with those that are within a structure and then those that are detached. And then finally, there could be instances, again, this is probably more the case for capitalizing on an existing structure that might not meet setback. There's a footnote to the use table, which I'll conclude with, that in the event that you don't comply with what has been outlined in the ordinance, you still may pursue a special permit for an ADU that doesn't meet the requirements of section 524. And it kind of holds that same standard that the zoning board typically applies to their special permitted uses, that it can't have a detrimental impact on the neighborhood. So clearly the standards that are outlined are to try to minimize impact. And that's why this is being proposed as an as of right use, that the bases have kind of been covered in terms of what the potential impact might be. Again, for a secondary unit to a single family, And again, in many of these districts, we already have the allowance of 2-family as of right. So there's kind of this density neutral issue. Again, somebody could decide either way whether they wanted to expand within an existing structure, build a standalone structure, or potentially convert to a 2-family. So this is what the use table would look like. The existing line item in section 2.3.7 has the accessory in-law apartments. And you can see all the residential districts in yellow allow them by special permit of the Zoning Board of Appeals. The proposal that was initiated by the Planning Board has the allowance of attached and detached as of right in the residential districts. And that footnote 5 is the one that says that accessory dwelling units that do not meet the dimensional standards of section 5.24 may be allowed by the issuance of special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals. So that is kind of an outline of the ordinance, the definition. And I did want to, again, the Planning Board recommendation that came out of the meeting on May 6th. I think that sounds right.
It was the 18th, maybe?
Was it the 18th?
Hold on.
No, May 6th. Sorry.
Okay.
And there was a lot of confusion about the dates because there was a discrepancy at the Gloucester Daily Times. They missed the noticing of this, so it kind of got continued out for another month for renoticing, but was recommended out of the last Planning Board meeting, I believe, on May 6th. You're looking at your notes. I'm looking at a calendar.
So the letter from the Planning Board was on March 18th.
Oh, wow.
And it said initiation of the amendments to the GZO and Cruise.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I was talking about the report of their recommendation, which came out of their last meeting.
Okay.
So they recommended in that form that was initiated back in March.
March 4th. Yep.
Yeah.
That's in the packet as well. Thanks, Greg.
So I wanted to just go through a couple of things that were part of the public comment that I think are worthy of you thinking about this. So the Planning Board, they kind of lived with this as it, kind of worked through the development of the ordinance. They referred it to you, referred it back to them. They were fairly comfortable with the form that was in. But I just wanted to highlight just a couple of things that came out of that public hearing as well. So there's a lot of different definitions of ADUs in different communities. And there was one question of whether or not it should have just been a little bit more specific about what the elements of the ADU would include. So there could be a clause that could be added that would say with provisions for living, eating, cooking, and sanitation. And it's common verbiage in other definitions. The one that was proposed does not include that. It really talks more about the kind of the principal use and the accessory use. So that's worthy of consideration. And these other comments kind of are in chronological order if you were walking through the ordinance. So there's one particular kind of what's defined as a procedural requirement, which is 524(2)B, which is really more of a general requirement for pursuing it. So there was a thought of whether or not that could actually be dropped down to section 524(3) because it's really more of a requirement rather than a procedure. So the procedure is you go to the building department, you're interested in doing this, you have to provide a site plan that gets reviewed. And this other standard that's really dealing with compliance with Title V and the sanitary code and all other building and zoning is really something that might be more appropriately in the following section that deals with general requirements for accessory dwelling units. Just a thought. There was some discussion about except for bona fide temporary absences. So we have this, this is intended to be one of the two units, whether the main house, the accessory dwelling unit, or maybe even the main house and the detached accessory dwelling unit in a separate structure, needs to be occupied by the owner of the property. And there was some discussion about, are there any instances where maybe there should be an exception to that? And so this language was offered by Judy Barrett, who also was instrumental in working all this as our consultant. The question was, could that phrase be abused? And I think what that was intended to kind of deal with would be, for instance, if somebody was hospitalized or if somebody was deployed. There could be instances where the homeowner might be absent from the property for a very legitimate reason, but whether or not, that's something that could be abused. I don't have I think we wanted to make sure that there was a relief valve in there for extreme circumstances, but that was offered as a suggestion that, perhaps that could be abused in some way where you had rental of both of the units. 524.3C deals with the screening of parking. So again, to try to minimize the potential impacts of this additional unit, whether it be interior or detached, there are screening requirements. There was some suggestion about whether or not that could be adequately addressed with a fence. Again, the planning board put in the requirements, for a reason, but that was offered as, would that be a reasonable alternative if parking were screened by fencing? In 524.3E, there's kind of just a sequencing issue. There is the allowance for, it'll be interesting to see how much this gets utilized. And if there are things that come up, there's kind of a relief valve for the creation of a guidance document, which I think is something we should always be thinking about. You get to these situations where you need to clarify. You don't want to throw out the whole ordinance, but you want to provide some clarification and guidance, and you want it to go through a process, through a body. So the suggestion that in E is the planning board shall have the authority to adopt ADU guidance document, providing interpretation guidelines to administer the section. That's probably should fall as the last item in that listing, just because there are the other requirements are being presented, and then there should be this, again, relief valve at the end. And then lastly, or second to lastly, 524.3F, there was concern that there are other forms of ownership other than condominium, and this is, again, supposed to be created as a rental unit. It is restricted from being sold as an individual unit in any way. So whether or not after condominium, it should be emphasized that cooperative form, which is not as common in Massachusetts, but that also be something that be restricted. So it would restrict condominium/cooperative. And then a final note, which I tend to agree with. We kind of don't have a real discussion about like the two things that we're trying to distinguish. We call it interior, but then we talk about an ADU detached, and there was a suggestion that you might want to say attached and detached, just so that they're kind of not necessarily opposites, but they're a little bit more connected in how one reads it. What's an interior versus something that might actually be an expansion, because that could be allowed with those size limitations. And then there was a comment about whether or not detached should be allowed by special permit. The proposal is that it would be allowed as of right. Again, all of these were presented to the planning board. They kind of said we're comfortable with what we've drafted, but I just wanted to make sure you had kind of the full flavor of what was raised. Other than these kind of specifics of comment, otherwise most of the comments of the planning board was very supportive of providing a new option and something that could be really needed in Gloucester. So I will stop there. I hope that was 15 minutes.
That was excellent. Thank you so much, Greg. Appreciate it. So counselors, what are your questions to Greg? I'm dying to hear from Council Holgren because she was on the Housing Production Plan Task Force. So
I'm so excited we're here on this day. This is just, I have been waiting for this. Thank you. Greg, you actually answered one of my questions. I have two, but the first one, thank you for elaborating on 5.2.243A because
Nope. I think did we just lose you?
Uh-oh. Can you hear me now? Is that better?
I'm not hearing anybody.
All right, uh-oh. Ah,
Greg.
I'm hearing her.
uh-oh.
Her picture is frozen, but I'm
The
hearing her.
Bluetooth? Is it Greg's Bluetooth?
Greg?
I have unstable internet.
We can hear you.
I think I'm back. I think I'm back. So my internet flaked a little bit.
Oh,
I will tell you, there's something in the stars, because I left the open space committee meeting to come here. And after I left, at some point, I think right around 6 o'clock, it crashed and could not be restored. So they were almost done, but I'm back.
Okay.
It wasn't
okay.
me.
So thank you for elaborating on the hospitalization or deployment piece as examples of prolonged absence. And I just, I wanted to ask, as far as
Uh-oh. Council Holgram, we can't hear you now. I can't hear.
So it's not me. Is it me? We can't hear you.
Oh, okay.
Now
Okay.
this time
Now it's my turn.
Now we can hear
we-
you
she's back now.
Where did I drop off?
at the beginning.
Oh no! I'm
We
sorry.
got the part about bona fide absences, and then what was your other question?
Quickly,
Yeah.
will property owners need to follow all zoning requirements if they build a detached dwelling, and would that then make a special permit moot?
So if it complies with the ordinance, then it's allowed, as proposed, it's allowed as of right. So they have to continue to comply with the zoning ordinance in every way. This provides provisions for detached. If it does not comply, they could pursue a special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals. Does that answer that question?
That answers my question. Thank you.
Okay.
Council Pat, questions?
I don't have any actual questions. I want to thank everyone for all the work. I can only be supportive. I don't know what type of voting we're going to have to do or whatever, but I'm happy to see it. I know Councilor Holmgren has worked on this for a long time, and I know that Greg has put a great effort in putting this together on behalf of the administration. And I think it's great to put Gloucester more, I guess, in line with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts in many cases. So we're not having these issues of, but they do this here, then, can we do this over here? And hopefully we're going to allow, as a result, more people to be able to stay here and afford to live in the community, whether that be with their family or whatever it may be. But it's just a positive from everything I can see. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Pat. So I have two questions. My first question is, I'm going to ask you about tiny houses. So in terms of the standalone unit, was that discussed at all? And if not, would we ever go back and consider at some other point looking into the revised zoning that are commensurate with tiny houses in terms of permitting, in terms of smaller stairs, et cetera? Because, Greg, I think about 4 or 5 years ago, I had requested that we look into tiny houses, and we got a little bit down the path, and then we knew that this was coming. We wanted to kind of see it. So I'm just throwing that out as, was that discussed? And at a later date, would you ever consider elaborating on the standalone unit to consider tiny houses?
Well, I guess, one of the questions is whether or not this in some ways accommodates, a tiny house. Again, there's no, what you need to provide in terms of sanitation, cooking, and quarters. There's kind of a minimum size that kind of falls under, some definitions related to housing. I think we're providing a pretty, a reasonable allowance for square footage, that many of those types of structures could be kind of fall into this category. But if you're talking about something like on wheels and then those other issues associated with building code issues, you know, I think there's a fair amount of accommodation for smaller structures. You know, they've been given different names, but you know, I think a lot could kind of qualify in this kind of realm of something that, provided it meets those setbacks and those height requirements, you know, there's some flexibility there. So, you know, whether you get into you know, tiny house zoning, you know, for entire areas or smaller lots and that type of thing, I'm not quite sure we're there yet. It'll be interesting to see. And I think there actually was one member of the public that commented and I think is engaged in that, you know, kind of world, that was really excited about, you know, what's being proposed here and how it could facilitate. Again, it's a little bit more of a, it's an accessory, it's not a principal use. And so I think, you know, at least that's where the discussion has led to this point.
Okay, I'm comfortable with that. I just wanted to ask that though. So thank you. So Counselor, I'm sorry, not Counselor, but Greg, do you, based on the public comments that you presented, do you think any of those are worthy of us amending what the planning board has put in front of us? Or are you comfortable with moving forward with sensitivity that if we need to go back and make those amendments, that you've presented those? What are your thoughts on that?
Let me just put that last slide back up. You know, I think, you know, having some more specificity around the use is helpful for people to see in the definition section. So including a clause that kind of really spells it out what this is. I have, you know, I don't think you know, less is necessarily more at this point. You know, it talks again a lot about, you know, the differences between interior and detached, and that's kind of a big one too. Just, you know, it makes it seem that that it all has to be built with inside the home, and clearly there's some contemplation that you may need to do things like stairwells and access points and things like that will require to be outside the structure. So that was kind of an overarching one as to whether or not there's kind of a find and replaced on interior versus attached, which I'm comfortable with. And I think, you know, that's also something that's been defined in other examples of ADU ordinances. The movement of just kind of the ordering of things, I'm fine with that too, just in terms of, you know, you want to make sure that something kind of reads kind of chronologically. So moving, you know, the provision related to something that's more of a requirement rather than a procedure, that this one right here, the second one, I'm comfortable with that. The bona fide temporary absence, again, you want a relief valve, and, you know, I think it's something that would be a decision point. Somebody provides the reason why they can't, and it doesn't create a situation where somebody says, I can't have any exceptions. So I'm kind of comfortable with that language. That was what was offered in the discussion of the development of it way back, I think, at the genesis of this with the housing production plan implementation working group. So I'm a little bit less concerned about that. The screening one is kind of an open question. You know, there was really, again, to try to understand that you're introducing something new, and you're trying to minimize impact. And so, you know, that was one of the considerations of how to do that with the screening requirement. So that's kind of an open question. You know, and these may be reiterated by the public when it comes back to you at the public hearing. The movements of the ordering of things in section 524.3, the E and F and the addition of cooperative, I'm comfortable with those two. And so for the most part, you know, other than the discussion around the screening and the temporary absence of having that relief valve, I'm fairly comfortable with these as changes.
So administratively, would it behoove us to allow you to go back to the planning board and redline these additions into the document that you presented? Or
I don't think, I mean, they've closed their public hearing and we've kind of gone through this before. Everybody gets to do their work, right? So they've provided a recommendation. I don't think any of these are really departures from what they provided to you, other than kind of some refinement. And so, you know, I can certainly, if you said, could you provide us a draft based on, you know, amendments associated with this slide, with the exception of, if you want them all in there, I can put them all in there, or, you know, work with the ones that I just discussed. I can certainly do that.
Council Holgram and Council Pett, do you think that that would be a good idea to ask Greg just to kind of redline the things that he thinks should be added? Or Council Holgram, because you were on.
Yes, if it's not too much trouble, would it be possible to offer these amendments tonight and vote it up, or are we not quite ready for that yet?
I mean, I think this is fairly prescriptive in terms of this kind of set of amendments that I can basically redline into the March 4th document. I need you to tell me that's what you want me to do.
Okay. That sounds good to me.
Yeah, Council Pett, do you have any thoughts on?
Again, if I would like for us to be able to move this forward this evening. And if there's a way for Greg to be able to include, whether you want to call this red line or however it is in a document, for us to be able to move forward, that'd be great. I would not like to have us end up having to go back and forth on this, you know, going forward, where if we can, one way or another, we can get the document moving forward today, and then they could make, you know, amendments later if that's the case. But I prefer if there's a way for Greg to, you know, put things in and for us to make motions to move this forward this evening. That's what would be my preference.
And I agree with both Council Holgram and Pett. I think what we could do is just add a sentence on to our motion, and that would be a request for our planning director to redline these changes into the document and then move it forward. So if that's, does that sound good, Council Pett?
That's a great compromise. Yeah.
I guess, yeah. And for clarity, I just would have you kind of like go through these, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 things and just indicate what you would like me to do. Again, in this last one, for instance, I mentioned that there was some, you know, question about making detached by special permit where it's allowed as of right now. That was not the recommendation of the planning board. It was, you know, for both forms to be allowed as of right. So I just would want to be clear on that. And in terms of the only other two that I've discussed is the screening requirement, which is the 524(3)(c), that the planning board, you know, put in specific requirements for screening, and then the relief valve for those particular potential exceptions. So if it's modifying the definition by including that clause, moving 524(2)(b) into the requirements, general requirements section of 524(3), and then moving 524(3)(e), relettering it as F, and then inserting cooperative and find and replace on interior with attached. If it was all of that, I can do it.
I'm comfortable with those 4, if it's the will of the committee.
I am as well. I just want to make sure that we're not going to do a whole special permit. They are going to be following the zoning requirements as of now, right?
As proposed, both a interior or attached, depending upon how we land, and a detached is provided that they meet the requirements of the ordinance, they would be allowed. If they don't meet the requirements, they could petition for a special permit to the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Wonderful. I think that's great. However, we need to, make the motions. I'd be happy to support them and give direction for the planning director to go ahead and include them as we make those amendments and move forward.
Great. Council Holgram, do you want to take a crack at the motion with moving forward with those 4 items to be redlined as we move forward?
Yes, my internet is weird though. Okay, there you all are. All my pictures have disappeared. Only half of you are showing up. Okay, wait a minute. Okay, so I move, and if I screw this up, please correct me. I move that the Planning and Development Standing Committee vote to amend the current accessory dwelling unit ordinance as recommended by the Planning Board to reflect the 4 changes discussed with Planning Director Greg Ketamatori.
And continue with the motion?
Oh gosh, I'm so sorry. I was so fixated on that. I actually don't have the motions template in front of me. Please give me a minute. I was so focused on that. Hang on one second. Unless Barry, you've got it in front of you.
I can continue if you'd like, because
okay. Yes, that would be great. Okay, thank you.
And to recommend that the city council accept these proposed amendments to the Gloucester zoning ordinance, section 5.24, accessory in-law apartments, as is included in the planning board memo dated March 18, 2021 to the city council and attached hereto by incorporation and reference. And you can move it because that's your job.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I so move.
Second.
Okay. Greg, did that sound logical in terms of the continuation of that motion?
I know what I'm doing. let's just say that.
Okay. So is there a discussion? We have a motion and we've got a motion by Council Holgram, a second by Council Pett. Discussion?
I actually don't have my motions template. I'm not sure what happened, but I don't have one. I don't know if I deleted it by accident. Sorry.
Okay. Well, I can take the lead in making the motions for the rest of the meeting. Don't worry about it.
Thanks.
But I'm comfortable. So I'm really excited about this, and I like the fact that we listened to some of the public comments that were brought up in front of the planning board, and that Greg was able to articulate what the important red lines are. And so I'm looking forward to bringing this forward to the full council with these red lines on them as we discuss. And I just think that this is a really positive move forward, and it's just heading in the right direction. And how grateful I am that David Holden is still on the call and has been listening for a long time, because it's really important that people that are involved with housing in Gloucester are excited about this, and that's a tribute to you. So thank you, and thank you, Greg. Any other comments and discussion?
I'd like to again thank the planning board, thank Greg for his work, and I would like to again. I guess I'm glad that the Housing Authority, that Dave Holden has stayed with us through all of this and even the technical issues. And maybe if we could just get a comment for, even though Greg's obviously working on the behalf of the administration, we do have Chris Siccarenza on this evening, and maybe we could get a comment from him on behalf of the mayor.
Love to hear from Chris. Chris, what are your thoughts? We can't hear you. We can't hear you.
He's not muted.
You're not muted.
How about now?
Now we can hear you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's just been a wonder tonight of all the technology, huh? On behalf of the mayor and the administration, of course, we're very pleased with not only the continued support by Greg on this really important issue, but of course, all the counselors on this call, whether we're talking about accessory dwelling or even tiny houses or little living and the different ways that we talk about it. I'm just thrilled to see that this is making progress tonight. And of course, the mayor is very excited to see next steps on this. And again, thank you to David Holden for staying on the line here as well too. This is a very piece of important ordinance changes and progress being made on a very important program that will catch us up with other communities. And we've seen some work across the North Shore on this, but it's nice to see that we can keep the affordability where we want it to be. And I know that's been a big goal for everyone on this call across the board, and certainly of the mayor as well too. But it's certainly with the three counselors on this call and the great leadership that Greg has continued to provide across this. And I will do my job of working with the city clerk's office to make sure that postings and public notices are actually being posted in the right places so we don't have any hiccups. This is part of my assurance here tonight wherever I can. So thank
Great.
you all and kudos to you all again. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, I'm ready to vote. Are you all ready to vote? Okay, we have to do a roll call and we'll start with Council Holgram.
Yes.
Council Pat?
Yes.
Council Gilman? Yes. The yeses have it, 3 in favor, 0 opposed. Thank you so much, Greg. Appreciate your hard work. Thank you, Chris.
And I'll provide the copy of the presentation from this evening as well as a red line probably by midday tomorrow.
Perfect. That's perfect. Thank you so much. I know it's been a long day for you, so thank you. Okay, next order of business is special council permit 2021-001, Cross Street, number 12, map 50, lot 18, GZO, section 2.3.1.7, conversion to or new multifamily or apartment dwelling, 4 to 6 dwelling units in the R5 high-density residential district, continued from May 5th, 2021. And we have Megan Breaker here representing the applicant. And Megan, if you would reintroduce yourself to us and then update us on where we are today from when we met last time. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Megan Breaker of Klein Gardner and O'Connor, representing the applicants. I do want to first start to say that the majority of the last presentation, my internet kept going out, so I just wanted to forewarn everyone. It kept saying it was unstable. Since the last meeting, this afternoon, you should have received the letter from Bill Sanborn in regard to the parking. That came in a little bit last minute, but it did come in. I also hope everybody, you were able to take the drive by as you said you were, just to look at the area. If anybody has any questions for me in regard to either Bill's memo or other questions that you have, I'd be happy to answer them.
So in fairness to Council Holgram and Council Pat, I'm not sure if you've seen this. If I may read it to you, that would be great. This afternoon was just a blur. So I did receive this around, I think, 2:30 today. So it's to me from Bill regarding 12 Cross Street parking. Madam Chair, this special permit application that is before P&D was granted zoning relief back in March 29th, 1979. We are not able to verify that the applicant at this time ever completed the process by going before City Council. The improvements described in the zoning decision have been completed to a point, and an apartment was added and some of the parking has been constructed, however, not to plan. At the present time, the property is required to have 4 parking spaces, 1 for each dwelling unit, as per ordinance. Given the history and trying to find the correct path to follow to correct the problem of no City Council special permit, the attorney, Megan Breaker, and myself feel the best avenue is to start with getting City Council approval of this special permit. If the council approves this special permit, then the applicant will either have to construct the parking area as described in the zoning decision or return to the Zoning Board of Appeals to seek permission to amend the zoning decision. I hope this answers your questions. If not, please contact me with further questions. And I did happen to be able to catch Bill Sanborn between multiple meetings and confusion this afternoon. And he said that if we approve it, it is conditioned that they comply with the parking, which was for 6 spots. So we can do that tonight. And but Megan, I wanted to hear from you on this because this is your decision, and you did what we asked you to do, and I want to make sure that you're comfortable with this.
With approving it on the condition of getting the 6 spots, is that your question?
Let me just read to you again what he said. We can approve it conditioned that you comply with the parking of 6 spots. Or we can also approve it and you can go back and renegotiate for the 4. Whichever, so you have an option, I believe. That's what I heard from Bill Sanborn.
Yes, and that's fine with me. And I've had that discussion with my clients, and they're aware that they have to go one way or the other, and that decision will be made timely. As I said at the last meeting, the property is under purchase and sale agreement, so my clients are looking to sell this as quickly as possible, and the buyers won't buy it until these problems are resolved.
Okay. So are we comfortable with that, counselors, in permitting this tonight, provided that they get the requisite approval with the Zoning Board of Appeals in terms of what way?
My question is, which way are they going? Are we going to vote? Are we going for them going forward with 6 or them applying to go to 4? I'm not sure what we're voting on here.
My understanding from Bill, and Megan, tell me if you agree with me, is that you have the relief from the zoning board if you go forward with 6. If you feel like you need to go back to the zoning board to get it changed to 4, they will have to approve that modification. Is that your understanding, Megan? Yes,
that's my understanding, that from my conversations with Bill. So if it was approved then through the city council, at that point, if my clients were looking for the relief, they'd go back to the zoning board for the 4 spots instead of the 6.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm still confused. So then, are you saying that your clients are happy to go forward with the 6 and, then go through their purchase and sale? And if the new owners want to change it to 4, they would go back for relief? Or are you saying that, I'm not sure I'm confused here.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Megan, you can explain.
After going through the city council permit process, my clients will then either comply with this and get the parking for 6 or go back to the ZBA prior to selling the property to get the relief for 4. Yes, I'm sorry.
So Council Pat, so in the letter, because you don't have the benefit of seeing this, at the present time, the property is required to have 4 parking spaces, 1 for each dwelling unit as per ordinance. So that's how it looks today. And that is in Bill Sanborn's letter. However, what was approved in front of the ZBA was 6. So we can approve this right now. And if Megan does nothing, then it's approved for 6, and that's what she has to do. If she wants to represent the applicant and go back and negotiate for 4, she'll have to go in front of the ZBA to get that. So does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. So that what we're going to vote on, if we want to approve this, is we're approving 6, and then her client can decide on whether they want to go through their sale that way, or if they want to go back, to the ZBA and change it and then come back again, I guess.
Go ahead, Council Holgram.
This is such a funny and counterintuitive process, only because of the legacy puzzle that we're solving here. So thank you so much, Megan, and thank you, Councillor Gilman, for reading that letter into the record. I do have one question because one of the neighbors had brought up an issue of drainage, and from looking at the Google map, the yard next door looked flat, but then driving by, I could see a pretty dramatic decline into the yard. So if the modifications are made to parking, will your client be able to ensure that there won't be any, to the best of their ability, drainage issues on the abutting property's yard?
And I will answer that because I asked Bill Sanborn to answer that today.
Great.
Covered in the letter, and he said that is all part of the requirement for the parking, so that will be addressed in that, but he didn't feel a need to add that to the letter. Megan, is that consistent with your understanding?
I did not have, yes, I didn't have that exact conversation yet with Bill as far as draining, but that's my general understanding, yes.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
So do you want to take a crack do you want me to try to read the motion? Because
yeah, I didn't get the email, and just because everything's been such a flurry these days, as you say, yes, I just missed it. So yes, if you wouldn't mind, Councillor Gilman, and I'll second.
All right, so I'm going to have to think this through at the end. Okay, so, and I'm a little bit fried right now, so help me along, councilors. Okay, you can take that off mute, Jen, and help me out. Okay, so I move to recommend that the City Council grant to Megan Breaker, lawyer, Esquire of Klein, Gardner, and O'Connor, PC, on behalf of owners Catherine D. Swager and Joyce E. McAuliffe, a special council permit 2021-001 for the property located at Cross Street number 12, Assessors Map 50, Lot 80, in the R5 district pursuant to Gloucester zoning ordinance section 2.3.17, conversion to or new multi-family or apartment dwelling, 4 to 6 dwelling units for a 4th dwelling unit. This permit is made on the basis of plans and elevations dated February 23rd, 2021, and submitted to the city clerk on April 13th, 2021, entitled Zoning Board of Appeals Plan and floor plans for 12 Cross Street, Gloucester. Pause.
Okay.
I just want to say the right thing. Okay.
Thank you. Sure.
With a condition, if this is modified to fewer than 6 parking spaces, it be referred to the ZBA for proper approval, and I so move. Oh, wait, before I move it. Subject to new information and or debate that results from the public hearing, the special council permit is deemed to be in harmony with the intent and purpose of the zoning ordinance, and I so move.
Well done, Madam Chair. Second. That was great. That sounds right, everybody, right? That sounds great.
Is that okay?
It sounds like Megan is going to be earning her keep here.
We're trying to help you, Megan, because this was such an administrative mistake. So any discussion, councilors, before we take a vote?
This was fun. I know that it was a lot of work, but we never see anything like this. So I'm a total nerd, and I'm sorry, but that was amazing. And thank you so much, Megan. Really, it's been a pleasure to work with you in this very short time. So thank you. I'm glad you're here.
Okay, so we have a Council Pet, anything to say in discussion?
Just Megan, say hello to cousin David for me.
I will.
Roll call vote. Council Holgram?
Yes.
Council Pet?
Yes.
Council Gilman, yes. The yeses have it. 3 in favor, 0 opposed. Thank you, Megan. Good
Thank
luck.
you.
And thank you for your professionalism. You've been a real trooper and we totally appreciate it.
Thank you all very much. I really appreciate everything. Have a good night. Rest of the meeting.
Good night. Okay, and for those that are still on the call, poor Diana and Elizabeth Cardarelli, so thank you. So the next order of business is public hearing, poll petition 2021, request by National Grid to install one SO pole on Eastern Point Road, beginning at a point approximately 155 feet northwest of the center line of the intersection of Raven Lane and Eastern Point Road. And Betsy, thank you for sticking with us. You deserve a medal tonight. It's been a tough meeting and I appreciate it. So you're free to unmute yourself, and if you can identify your name and address and who you're representing, that would be terrific. Thank you.
Hi all, thank you so much. My name is Elizabeth Cardarelli. I am a distribution designer at National Grid. Our office is at 44 River Street in Beverly.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to tell us about your poll petition?
Sure. The poll petition that we have here is actually for a revamp of a home. The original service that crossed over the property ran partially over a roof. When they started to do the revamp on the home, they can no longer keep it in that location, so they had to relocate to the opposite side of the house. In doing that, the service would not meet our heights and clearances crossing over Eastern Point. And we had fear of a vehicle taking it down, you know, any type of trucks, you know, UPS vehicles, something like that, clipping the corner of the wire. So in this case, we were petitioning today to set a pole which would only have secondary wire. It would just be one wire. Verizon is not going on this pole, so you can see it's listed as a sole owned pole. That pole will be set, this portion of the sidewalk is pretty wide. That's why I chose that location, to make sure that it wouldn't interfere with anything going on in the sidewalk, any type of walkway going down towards that water over there and down towards the beach. There is a portion of what looks like it's going to be grass that's going to be put in a little open area in that section. And that's why I chose that location, because that was my assumption, was that it was only going to be a grassed-in area on the thick, wider portion of that sidewalk. So we will be installing an anchor with this because of the angle, as you can see on my sketch. It's going to go a little bit past the house, and then the service wire is going to come back into the service point on the house. And I did my best to try to pick the best location that would not interfere with anybody's visual, looking over that direction. I tried to really put it where there were a lot of trees, so that nobody would see that.
Okay, thank you. And I see that there are 5 abutters, I think. Have they all been properly noticed?
Yes, they have been, Val.
Okay, thank you. And do we have any reports from our Public Works Director in support or of opposition to this?
Yes, I have one memo from the Director of Public Works in favor.
Okay, thank you. Councilors, do you have any questions to the applicant? Okay, I think since I'm the only one that has the motions, I'll read the motions if that's okay. Okay, you don't have to help me as much on this one. Oh my gosh. Okay. And everyone knows that poll petitions, we are the permitting authority for poll petitions. So, okay. I move to permit Massachusetts Electric Company, DBA National Grid, to locate poles, wires, and fixtures, including the necessary sustaining and protecting fixtures along and across the public way, and install one SO pole on Eastern Point Road, beginning at a point approximately 155 feet northwest of the center line of the intersection of Raven Lane and Eastern Point Road. Install one pole and one anchor in front of 59 Eastern Point Road, as shown on a plan included in the application dated March 22nd, 2021, with the following conditions. 1, notification to the Department of Public Works 72 hours in advance of the proposed work A construction schedule will be prepared by the applicant for review and acceptance by the Department of Public Works. 2, proposed excavation may only occur during accepted road opening and construction season, 15th of March through 15th of November. 3, in the absence of a detailed construction plan, the Department of Public Works requests all proposed conduits and appurtenances shall be placed so as to cause minimum conflict with existing underground utility services. 4, all excavations must be secured at all times. 5, all excavated trenches shall be patched flush with the surrounding asphalt using hot mix asphalt binder at the end of each workday to minimize pedestrian hazards. Asphalt shall be applied in 2 lifts of 2 inches, totaling 4 inches. 6, sidewalks must be restored with like material immediately after pole set. 7, all final paving shall be done in consultation with the Department of Public Works and an agreed upon final paving plan executed by the applicant, and I so move.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion, counselors? A roll call vote. Counsel Holgram,
Yes.
Counsel Pat,
Yes.
Counsel Gilman. Yes, the yeses have it, 3 in favor, 0 opposed. Thank you so much for your patience tonight. You were a real trooper. We appreciate it for being here. Thank you.
Not a problem. Thank you so much for your time. Have a good evening.
You too. Good night. Okay. Wait a sec. I have to just get organized. Okay. Last item on the agenda, item number 5, public hearing, poll petition 2021-003, request by National Grid to replace a regulator station at Veterans Way and Washington Street, Gloucester, Mass, for the transmission and distribution of gas and of the pipes, valves, governors, manholes, and other structures, fixtures, and appurtenances designed or intended to protect or operate said mains, and the digging up and opening the ground to lay or place same. So I would love for Diana, who's been the most patient of everyone, because you were the first on the call, would you introduce this poll petition and tell us about it, and first introduce yourself?
Yes, hi, thank you for having me. My name's Diana Cuddy. I work for National Grid, 40 Sylvan Road, Waltham, Mass, on the gas side. And I'm here tonight to request a grant location permit for the replacement of a regulator station along Veterans Way. It will also involve the replacement of approximately 600 linear feet of new piping. The regulator stations are typically rated based on or replaced based on a formula of age, integrity, and reliability. 2 issues with this one. Categorize it for replacement now, and so I'm very hopeful that that I can get permission tonight to do that. We're ready to roll. The construction duration would be approximately 6 to 8 weeks. I have the supervisor name and phone number I can provide for the council should they have any further questions during the construction phase of it. We do a butter notification prior to construction, in addition to a butter notification for this hearing tonight. And I think that's everything I had, unless you have any questions.
So we have 9 abutters and they've all been properly noticed?
Okay.
Okay. And Sherry, do we have approval from our Public Works Director?
Yep, 1 memo from the Director of Public Works in favor of the poll petition.
Okay, great. Councilors, do you have any questions before I read the motion? Council Pat.
I've got a couple of things. First of all, as Sherry just said, and you said initially, this is a public request for a poll petition, and it's a regulator station. It's a different thing. So I just want to make sure when we do the motion that we clarify this is not for a poll. This is for a regulator station.
So yeah, technically it's a grant of location for on the gas side. Yep.
Right. That's what I'm saying. I'm just saying this to our chairperson to make sure that when we do the motion, it's not a poll, just for clarification. And then my question to you, Diana, is obviously everyone in the city of Gloucester and all the visitors to Gloucester have been aware of all the work that National Grid has been doing up and down Washington Street from Grant Circle, towards the center of town, now through the down towards Main Street. And we're aware of all the inconvenience to everyone, but we also appreciate all the upgrades and the necessary upgrades and not necessarily safety necessary, but safety upgrades that all this does. My question is this work going to begin before the work on the other side of Grant Circle is completed, or are we going to be, are we going to be fighting on, both sides of the Rotary? Some of the traffic that's diverted off of Washington Street goes all the way over to, say, Maplewood Avenue. Then some of it continues and up and gets to Grant Circle, or some goes all the way up and then comes out Poplar Street to where, in the area of where you're talking about doing the work, Poplar and Veterans Way, et cetera. I'm just wondering if, time schedule wise, how this is scheduled to work, if you know.
So I do, it's unfortunate sometimes when you have an infrastructure that's all put in at the same time, it kind of sort of needs to be replaced at the same time. So I do know this is a priority job for us. We're holding some crews right now that are available, would be available shortly to go in. We do always get a police detail. Some jobs, big jobs like this might have 2 police details, which would help with the traffic. In terms of the permitting for those other projects, I don't know scheduling wise, but these are separate contractors that, for us that would be doing the work. So crew availability shouldn't be an issue.
Okay.
And to Council Pet's question, which I think is a valid one, and this is also my ward, is people leave Ward 4 and go down Washington Street. And there's a provision here that notification to the Department of Public Works 72 hours in advance of the proposed work. A construction schedule will be prepared by the applicant for review and acceptance by the Department of Public Works. So I'm sure Mike Hale isn't going to go ahead and allow this to happen if something else is happening on Poplar Street. So he will know what we need to do to exit Ward 4 onto the Rotary. So I'm confident that that there is still a control to make sure that this is handled at the right time, if that's what your concern was, which is valid.
Yeah, no, I'm just, my concern is that we often get commentary, and if, I'm sure you've seen a lot of it on social media, et cetera, about all the work that is going on. And again, my most important thing is communication. And that's why I just want to be clear about how this project is basically a continuation of that same work that's being done on the other side, and that people have to understand that number one, it needs to get done for safety reasons, and
Right.
Number two, they should be happy that their infrastructure is being done, even though there is, significant inconvenience and intrusion into their lives while it's being done. So I just
Right.
want to make sure that it ends up being clear to everyone that they understand what's going on, and that people will know that type of schedule. I know Director Hale has put out a notice of what work is being done on which streets, et cetera. And I'm sure Chris is on the call, and I'm sure that the city on the website can put out some information as to how this work will, buddy up with the work going downtown. It's going to cause some issues, but I'm in full support of the work being done. I have no
Thank
issue
you.
with voting in
Thank you.
support of it.
Okay.
And I firmly agree about communication. That's why I'll send Sherry the supervisor's phone number and name for contact during the project. I think that's really important as well. And I'll reach out to the DPW director tomorrow regarding the traffic management plan. But I did, yeah, so as the last comment, our police details are what we hire to help with traffic management. So they will be on site during the entire duration of the project.
Great. So
Yeah,
I
if you
might
could, as well as sending to Sherry and, I'm sorry.
Okay, no, I was just going to say that one of the parts of the motion I'm going to change a little bit because to Councilor Pett's point, this is listed as a poll petition, but it actually is to replace a regulator station. So to locate the mains and to replace a regulator station. So I will modify one of the conditions to be consistent with that wording. So I'm prepared to read the motion if that's okay with councilors. Okay. So I move to permit Boston Gas Company, DBA National Grid, to locate mains and to replace a regulator station at Veterans Way and Washington Street, Gloucester, Mass, for the transmission and distribution of gas and of the pipes, valves, governors, manholes, and other structures, fixtures, and appurtenances designed or intended to protect or operate said mains, and the digging up and opening the ground to lay or place same as shown on a plan included in the application dated December 10th, 2020, with the following conditions. 1, notification to the Department of Public Works 72 hours in advance of the proposed work. The construction schedule will be prepared by the applicant for review and acceptance by the Department of Public Works. 2, proposed excavation may only occur during accepted road opening and construction season, 15th of March through the 15th of November. 3, in the absence of a detailed construction plan, the Department of Public Works requests all proposed conduits and appurtenances shall be placed so as to cause minimum conflict with existing underground utility services. 4, all excavations must be secured at all times. 5, all excavated trenches shall be patched flush with the surrounding asphalt using hot mix asphalt binder at the end of each workday to minimize pedestrian hazards. Asphalt shall be applied in 2 lifts of 2 inches totaling 4 inches. 6, sidewalks must be restored with like material immediately. I think I can just say that. I don't think I have to say whatever the regulator is. So just, I think that that's fine. 7, all final paving shall be done in consultation with the Department of Public Works and agreed upon final paving plan executed by the applicant, and I so move.
Second. That's awesome.
So ready to adjourn this meeting. Okay, is there a discussion, councilors?
I agree with Councilor Pett. Safety is the most important, and I know it is a temporary inconvenience to the neighborhood, but I am awfully glad that National Grid is being proactive in replacing this equipment. So thank you, Diana.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Pett, any comments before we vote?
Just again, as I said before, thank you for all our safety upgrades. The city, at the end of the day, will be much better off for it. And maybe Diana, besides sending in that information to Sherry in the clerk's office, you might send it in to Chris in the mayor's office as well. Sometimes there may not be somebody around to answer at the clerk's office, but most likely there's someone from the mayor's office is going to be on 24/7 to have to answer to someone. So that contact information could be very important to them.
Great. And I will be supporting this, Diana, and we will make sure we send a message to your boss about your patience tonight.
Okay. My pleasure. I actually learned a lot.
Oh, good. I'm so glad because we did too.
I'm really
okay, roll call vote. Councilor Holgram.
Yes.
Councilor Pett.
Yes.
Council Gilman, yes. The yeses have it, 3 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you very much.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Wait a minute. Thank you,
So-
Diane.
Thank
Diane.
you.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. I'm looking
Okay,
a little
roll call
eerie.
vote. Council Holgram,
Yes.
Council Pat,
Yes.
Council Gilman, yes. The meeting is over. Thank you, Krista Carranza, Sherry, oy vey.
Thank you all so much. This was a great meeting.
Oh my God, if we
Really.
could have a
Thank
group
you.
hug right now. Anyway, good night, everybody.
Great job, everyone.
Thank
Good night.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.